What happened everyone? It's Digital here as another early week stream. And yeah, and I was actually kind of a bit bored, so I was like, why not? Why not? And it's like that's not the first time I actually done a stream early in the week or mid in the week. But I just wanted to do something and since I actually didn't do much streams lately, so I was like, why not do the stream today? And what's been happening in my life recently? Uh, Not much actually. I got a new cat, a female cat, and yeah, she's energetic. That's for certain. She's only 3 years old. My previous cat was only like a year older, but yeah, unfortunately, my previous cat was he had to be relocated to on the countryside due to the fact that he was peeing around in my apartment and yeah, we believe that he was an outdoor cat and suddenly been living in a small apartment. Well, it wasn't good for him. So our new cat was, well, she's actually a bit better than I know. She's only 3 years old and um, she doesn't even look that big, but compared to my previous cat, she is way smaller. And I only had her for less than a week. And well, I haven't been able to pick her up her as much since she isn't really used to me at that moment yet, but it will eventually will. But I wanted to talk about her at all. So, what else have we talk about? Oh, as you may all know, that the new Zootopia 2 is going to be released sometime soon, and they actually released a second trailer of the movie. And there was actually one small detail, even in the first trailer, that some people noticed. In one scene where Nick and Judy is driving in a car, there is a shirt. Nick's shirt says "Foxy Dad." So is that like a reference to them actually be a couple or a family? Well, it's not really necessarily that meaning. It could be maybe just an Easter egg or something else. But there is actually that something that I did notice. In the first trailer, we can actually see Mr. Big's daughter um, has her daughter. Mr. Big's granddaughter was supposed to be born sometime early, sometime in the in the first movie, and she was supposed to be named Judith after Judy. But in the second movie, her daughter Judith is born, or at least she appeared to be maybe, I guess, 3 years old or something. At least that she at least, I mean, she looks like it almost like a young toddler in comparison. And it's like, okay, 2, 3 years, so that had been like 2 to 3 years since the first movie released in a timeline. Actually, no, this might be a little confusing. Compared to in the first movie when Frubella, I think her name is, or Fru Fru, is still pregnant with her first daughter, Judith. And then the fact that her daughter is like had been born and is at least a few years old in the second movie. You may think it had been at least a few years between those movies, but that is absolutely wrong. It has only been a week. Yeah, you heard me right. Apparently, there has only been a week between the ending of the first movie and the beginning of the second movie. How does even possible, if you ask me? I mean, if Mr. Big's granddaughter Judith is supposed to be appearing as a very young age, uh, I have to say a young toddler at least, around maybe 4 or 5, and it says Okay, she had to be. It's in like impossible for any animal to grow age that fast in just in a week. There is no biological animal in the world that lives or age that fast. No, even though the dog breed Great Dane usually aged fast, but not that fast. Not at all. So I mean, it's kind of a bit weird. What would Twilight's reaction be if Starlight was dating Cadence? Well, first she would be surprised, supportive, and most of all. But if this, well, that also depends if they start dating recently, like if they told Twilight after about a week, or if they have been dating a secret for a long period without being revealing much. Yeah, but she's still being supportive to Cadence and Starlight, no matter what it is. But let's go back to this Zootopia 2. There is actually that in the movie, now that the second trailer has revealed a lot more information, at least more details of what's going to happen. Apparently, that the snake is a viper. And according to Nick, stating in the first trailer that snakes hasn't even been present in Zootopia for ages. Okay, you may be thinking, why is there any reptiles? Well, it's like any reptiles, like snakes, lizards, anywhere in Zootopia. If Zootopia is supposed to be a big city where all animals are welcomed, because here's the friend, if you think about it, the snakes, they are a predator species. They hunt for small animals like birds, mice, rats, and all that. And then, of course, in Zootopia, you have the previous mayor who was a lion, and you have Nick as a fox, and many other predatory animals, including the fact that Mr. Big has polar bears as bodyguards, and he had a jaguar as a personal driver. So, certain animals in the Zootopia, like mammals and prey and like carnivores and herbivores animals live together in Zootopia in peace. So why aren't there any reptiles, snakes, lizards living in Zootopia? I mean, if they're supposed, since this Zootopia has divided sections, like Tundra Town for the polar bears and even like Mr. Biggs as an Arctic shrew, and they had this jungle, this district, the jungle district. You have the savannah district. So if there were supposed to be any lizards or reptiles living in Zootopia, they were clearly would have been living in the jungle district. But aren't there any reptiles living in Zootopia? As Nick stated in the first trailer that's released months ago, stating that snakes hasn't been present in Zootopia in ages. Why is that in a particular reason for snakes or any reptiles that aren't even allowed in Zootopia? Was this also an incident that was caused by a reptile to cause them to be exiled or banished from Zootopia? If that is the reason, the whole concept of all living united society, it will be completely be false. Because if that in this utopia where you have lions, you have tigers, jaguars, leopards living among any other animals like sheep, rabbits, and all that. So if they can live together in peace, And since there are many mammals that even like jaguars and others that lives in jungle district, that's both predators and prey living together and as united peacefully. But then why aren't there any reptiles in Zootopia? Okay, in the first movie, it wasn't focused much on that. And even in this TV series that was also focused on this, some of the background characters, like say Frou Frou, Flash, and some other background characters. But still, if you ask me, it's kind of a strange that if Zootopia is still supposed to be a big city where every single animal is supposed to be embraced to live in peace, then why aren't any reptiles even present? Certain, certain reptiles, like say the chameleons, they only live off flies and other small bugs. They get probably harmless. And of course, they had this other lizard that's actually kind of nicknamed as the Jesus lizard. It literally can run on the water in a fast speed. In fact, the Jesus lizard is actually present in the second trailer for the upcoming movie. But it's kind of strange because this Gary, this Viper, he apparently has a family and he really wants the reptiles. It seems that he wants the reptiles to be returned to Zootopia. But there must have been some sort of incident or scandal to cause all reptiles, including lizards, to be banished or exiled from Zootopia. I know otherwise it had to be a certain reason for that the reptiles aren't even welcomed to live in Zootopia. Even if there are reptiles that could live in Zootopia, there had to be some harmless. But why? I mean, if those are the reptile species like the vipers or any poisonous snakes, if they are caused a problem, then shouldn't the other species like lions, jaguars, and other predatory animals, wouldn't they be live in one section alone? I mean, if like this, if the vipers or any snakes or reptiles aren't even allowed to live in Zootopia, it's kind of discriminating. Like it's almost like kind of say a hate crime or something, because there must be some sort of some a form of reaction or a scandal or an incident that made all the reptiles to be not even permitted to live in Zootopia, unless there are reptiles living in Zootopia, but they are living underground in secret. Only them knows that. Because in the second trailer of Zootopia, there's actually a scene where Nick and Judy do in fact arrive to a place where there are reptiles. And before anyone asks, what kind of reptiles? I don't know. I just don't know because it was only for a brief moment we can actually see this is like a looks like to be an almost an underground bunker, maybe a warehouse or some kind that is filled with all kinds of reptiles, lizards, snakes, perhaps any of those kinds. And what exactly why is that they had to be enforceable living in secret or some sort of a secret hidden sanctuary? I mean, think about it. If they had to be enforceable living there, is it possible that they all once lived in Zootopia until some incident that made them forced to be leaving? It's kind of strange if you ask me. I mean, Zootopia is the city itself is supposed to be a place, a sanctuary for any kind of animal supposed to be embrace of peace, unity. You mean you can like say unity? She can walk around in the city even before she joined the police academy. She could have been walking around on the streets of Zootopia. She could pass a lion, a jaguar, without feeling any fear. So why wouldn't it be any other animals like, well, but there is another animal that we hadn't even seen. Well, that is a one class of the mammals, primates. In fact, ever since the first movie and at the second being released and the TV series, there hasn't been any mention it, or even like mentioned directly or indirectly of a primates. You may think, wait, what about Flash? No, he's a sloth. He is a grand sloth. He's a sloth, and they aren't even the same branch of the mammal animal kingdom as the monkeys or apes. They are totally different species. I mean, we hadn't even seen any primates, like no gorillas, no chimps, no baboons, or anything at all. If this is supposed to be a mammal in the whole kingdom, there is a theory that the primates are extinct. That also the fact that this mysterious figure in the second movie that's wearing this cloak and has this yellow glowing eyes. Some think that is the last human. I mean, like, whoa, back up. How does it even possible? I mean, I don't think this is not a human. Is it possible it could be another animal that we haven't seen yet? I think no, because I believe that is may actually be a reptile of some kind. It's really strange, but there is actually another theory that that mysterious cloaked figure is actually not other than Nick Wilde's own dad. There's a theory that Nick's own father is this cloaked figure. He was supposed to be appearing in the first movie, but that was eventually scrapped during the production. The only one in his family is his mother, even though we never seen her face. But to having this mysterious figure to be his father, I don't think that's possible. I mean, why would that even be possibility in that? I mean, I don't think so. But yeah, so second season or the sequel of the Zootopia 2 is has a mysterious in fact part of it. I mean, okay, there is actually one funny scene from the first trailer that was released months ago. Is that when Judy and Nick is in this swamp town or village in the middle of the swamp, when they have a beaver is talking to uh, I think is a beaver talking to this hippo, and they're first like, hey Bob," and then like back and forward. You can't even tell exactly what they're saying, and yeah, that was pretty funny though. But there are so many things about the second movie that we're curious about. Like since the second movie of Zootopia were originally supposed to be released sometime since the first one was released in 2016. The second one, well, originally Zootopia 2 were supposed to be released 2018, something like that, and there were actually even talk about two movies about originally, but apparently they were scrapped, or at least removed from production. But now, nearly a decade later, we finally had the sequel. And I was like, okay, this might be interesting, but there is the major plot hole in the whole sequel of this. Like I mentioned earlier, in this first movie, when we see Mr. Big's daughter, Frou Frou, getting married and eventually has her own daughter, Judith. Well, even though her daughter isn't born in the first movie, but she is born and is at least a few years old in the sequel at the beginning. But the problem is that Frou Frou's daughter Judith looks to be could have been like 4 or 5 years old. But that is the problem. It's not like it has been 4 to 5 years since the movie started, or at least since between the time gap between the first and the second. No, it has only been a week between the first and the second movie. Unless that the Arctic shrew in Zootopia has a rapid growth, which just makes a plot twist. And even I can't understand myself how that's even possible. But yeah, I wasn't even sure about that. In a Cozy Heart Nightmare Night, can you include the 5-year-old daughter? And what costumes would Cozy Glow and Flurry Heart wear in the story? Um, I don't know. I hadn't even focused on that, and honestly, I had kind of forgot about it most of it since. I mean, there have been a lot of things that's been happening in my life recently. So, hey, Athena, what's up? Um, yeah, I don't know if the game guy or Malakai is coming in back. So, yeah, I did invite them on Discord, so who knows? But the fact about this Utopia, there were actually ever since the first movie was made, there were tons of you know. Oh right, sorry, I'm mistaken. It wasn't the beaver? It wasn't the a hippo. It was a walrus. Sorry, my bad, my bad, my bad. But yeah, Stopia itself is a pretty fun movie. I haven't actually seen this TV series based off the show on Disney Plus. It's only like 6 or 8 episodes, and those episodes aren't even that long. I think not even 20 minutes, not even 10 minutes. I would think, if I remember right, it was between 5 or 8 minutes or something. I don't know for sure. But Zootopia itself is very interesting concept of the whole thing. But then that actually got me thinking. There is another movie or two movies called Sing that is about this koala who lives in a big city who owns a theater that passed down from his own father and that unfortunately due to fact some reasons I don't remember since been a while since I saw the movie that in order to save his theater from being sold or demolished he had to hold this talent show. So I was like, wait a minute, those are all animals. Is it possible that the Sing movies is connected to the Zootopia universe? I mean, they're all animals. There are no humans in that. I mean, it's it's kind of possible. But the other movies that recently also been made, the bad guys, about with the wolf and his shark snake companions, they may not actually not even be connected to Zootopia because in those movies they actually has humans in them. So I don't think that one is not even connected at all, but at any level. But Zootopia itself is a very interesting movie. I was curious when I first heard about this potential for a sequel within the next few years after the first one, but it didn't happen. And eventually, it was just either put on hold. So who knows? And but there is another one. There is this upcoming movies for next. Uh, okay, I can't say exactly when these particular movies are supposed to be released. since they hadn't been given any official release date. But within them for assuming that at least for the next 10 years, that there are supposed to be new remakes of some of the Disney classic movies. Okay, I was like, okay, okay. It's but there were at least a few movies that were supposed to be remake, like um, Sword in a Stone. Um, what else? Tangle was supposed to be in the second movie of the princess, but that whole idea was put on the shelf indefinite, meaning that movie is put on the shelf infinite. So the Tangle remake as a live action didn't happen. And that is due to the fact of the Snow White movie fiasco. Yeah. But But as we all know recently, as one big movie based on one series and also the first movie, well, actually, it has several spin offs, Lilo and Stitch. I get back if we confirm to say this, but Lilo and Stitch actually has a second movie in the development. But exactly when that movie will be released, it's hard to say. It's very much difficult to say right now, though. But when I saw that movie, well, I haven't actually seen the movie, but when I saw the cast of the one who played the roles, like for Lilo, Nani, Jumba, but there was one single character they didn't add it. Captain Gantu. If you don't know who that is that giant shark humanoid creature or alien that was supposed to be given the mission to hunt down Stitch. But apparently, they decided not to include him in the movie. And the fact that not to be doing it, they actually changed so that Jumba will be the main bad guy to hunt down Stitch. And the fact there's only one another thing that they also um, they changed in this movie is that in the original movie of Lilo Stitch, Jumba and Peakley they only wear some disguises like some wigs, costumes, or some dress or clothes in order to blend among the humans. But in the new version of the movie, they actually used a holographic device, a small device that projected a hologram that surrounded the entire bodies to make them look like a normal human. Okay, is that as a way or an idea from the original? I think that is a very clever because I don't think they actually thought of doing that in the first movie. But there is another one, another small detail that's kind of set me off. Cobra, Asian Cobra, the one that this African American man who's in the original now working as a social child protective service agent. Now, apparently, in this new version, he is also been tracking down Stitch. And I was like, whoa, that is big messed up. And there is even one slide in the end of the movie that Nani, she wanted to study at this university in San Diego. But the problem would have been she would have to be staying at that university at the US mainland. And the travel between San Diego and Hawaii, it's not like that she could just jump on the plane and go over every time to go home, since there's several hours between. And if there was a medical emergency for Lilo, even though that she would have been on the plane, It's still will taking at least a few hours between to reach the island, and also there can also be that the flight could have been delayed. We all know sometimes delayed in planes can actually happen due to for like weather can be, I don't know, like there could have been a volcano on Hawaii that can erupted and makes that grounds all planes, since no planes aren't even allowed to fly in when there's eruption, because if they do, the plane would crash. It can't do that. And but so they it really changed. So Jumba gave Nani this type of device that looks like almost like a firearm, but is that but there's a portal gun, meaning she can open a portal while she is in San Diego and step close and step out through the portal and end up being in just an instant back home in Hawaii. So she can be still living, sleeping at home, but go to her class in San Diego by using the portal weapon gun that she has. Okay, that was a very impressive solution. They actually changed that as in the new version of the movie, and I don't see this as wrong if they want to add some new details in the new versions and all that. But even though they're in the like in the original Lilo and Stitch, this actually is if you may not notice or may maybe not remember, but in one scene when this spaceship is flying through the jungle, that was actually not even originally supposed to happen. Originally, it was actually flying through a big city, and the spaceship was supposed to be a jumbo jet or a commercial plane, and that Stitch were the pilot. But that was eventually removed from the whole production. That was because that the movie was in the development just around the time of the 9/11. So rather than having the plane flying through a big city, and if this would happen, people who had lost someone in the 9/11 event, they would be horrified, and this horrified reminding what happened. So rather than having a big city scene replaced to in a jungle with from a plane to a spaceship, and I think it was that was a good cover or change. But you may ask, wait, can this be seen like a deleted scenes in a DVD or Blu-ray? Actually, no. This was never included as a deleted scenes because in many movies, this always has this deleted scenes section. That's worst scenes that was not included in the movie. You may think, wait, so if this was not even in the Blu-ray or in the original DVD, how would I even know about it if I seen it myself? Well, apparently that is actually on YouTube. Don't even ask me how. It just is. But there are so many other movies that this Disney were planning to do. At least, actually, one movie that wasn't made, Pocahontas, to do cultural sensitive. So yeah, I think it's a very possibility that may actually not happen at all. And due to the fact that Disney were planning for many more other movies over time, like Sword and Stone as a remake, um, uh, I don't remember exactly what I meant. There were at least a handful of other movies that were supposed to be as a remake, but they were changed eventually. But Bambi is at least one of the remakes, and I really don't know if that's gonna work because one of the classic movies of Disney did remake Dumbo. Dumbo the movie itself, the original, was so beloved by generations of people. But the remake of Disney's Dumbo, it ruined the whole movie. I hadn't even seen it, but in fact, I read what happened, including one thing: the mouse, the small brown mouse that was helping Dumbo to gain this confidence that he could fly. He was never included in the live action version. In fact, and Dumbo didn't even fly near until the end of the movie. And the another small detail is that in the original, his mother is sitting in her own private train cart while her own son is flying around while as the train is driving forward. But in the new version of Dumbo, that didn't even happen. Rather from that, Dumbo and his mother was shipped off to India to an elephant reservation. And that was the only time when Dumbo flew. He only was flying near the end of the movie when he was in India with his mother in this reservation. I was like, what? This is just insane. Come on. If Dumbo was supposed to be in this classic movie and how all the things, he was supposed to be a famous, having gained so much fame. The mouse became his manager. But the fact that in the new version, the mouse was not even included at all. And the fact that they altered the whole ending, it's just ruined one of the classics. I know that I said this so many times before, but it's true. Disney ruined every single classic. Can you even imagine what they had even planned for Tangled, or do I even say it? Um, right, right. What if they had changed for Tangled? But the worst case, if Pocahontas would have happened, can you even imagine what changes that's going to be in it? And in fact, I don't even know, and I don't really want to know. Even Hunchback Notre Dame was supposed to be giving it as live action, but that one was removed. It was going to be a mix of the Disney's live action version and based from the original novel of that one of the Hunchback Notre Dame. Okay, I was like, okay, but ever since Snow White the fiasco happened, many movies was pulled off the shelf, or at least removed to even has been production. I mean, kind of is strange, but I mean, think about it. The Snow White is supposed to be such a classic. I mean, Snow White, the movie itself, was it actually the very first movie that Disney started with. And that movie has been around. It has been around for, excuse me here, 88 years. So for nearly 90 years. And that movie brought so much laughter, passion, action, sadness. It gave us everything. And the Disney, when they decided to remake it now, almost about, okay, I don't even remember exactly when the movie was released, but it did change a lot. Because when I saw that, the fact that when I heard the Seven Dwarfs in a movie, all CGI. In fact, during the event production, they used people as models. And the fact is, They even use little people. They use normal average height people as models. I was like, what? So why would you? Okay, so yeah, it's it's strange, and the fact that the prince. When I first read about the cast months ago, even months before the movie was even released, there was only mention of two names: Maple and Jonathan. There was two names I didn't even recognize. But then I felt like, Jonathan, could that be that they had given the prince a new name? Because if you're going to read on Disney Wikipedia's page of the original Snow White, if you're just looking at the cast, when you see the prince, it only says the prince. He is never even given an official name in a movie. His name is not even spoken. But apparently, his name is supposed to be Prince Florian. But when I saw this in the new version, Jonathan. So it's like, okay, Jonathan may actually be his new official name as a prince. But plot twist, they didn't include the prince at all. Rather, they changed from a prince to a thief. I mean, okay, the concept itself is very similar to Aladdin. I mean, he was a street thief, stole food in order to survive, married the princess. So yeah, I mean, in that concept, it's not much new, but changing the prince into a thief, and that the fact that he actually marries Snow White near the end of the movie, I was like, okay, that's huge plot twist. But at least one thing, we actually seeing her dad, the king. In the original, he has never make any mentions or reference or even appeared in the movie. Even the queen, the good queen, Snow White's biological mother, there is in fact a deleted scene that she made appearance, but she was never mentioned or that. And I was like, oh, that's terrible. You know, you know, this might have to be fun part. The one who actually played the voice actor for the evil queen, Lucille, during the production, when she was told, or at least asked, to talk with a raspy voice. So the funny is, she left the recording studio for only for a moment, and when she came back, she actually gave this iconic raspy voice as the evil queen. And the people recording asked Lucille how she was able to pull off that raspy voice when she was recording for as Evil Queen. You may be thinking she had been smoking for years in order to have that raspy voice. Nope. She said that she pulled out her teeth like the thieves. Now, yeah, she apparently she just removed her teeth and talked as Evil Queen with that raspy voice. I mean, the original movie of the Snow White, it was a classic. In fact, Disney as a company started just before the movie was even produced. But you may not know this, but Disney, or at least Walt Disney Company, could have been either bankrupt or sold to another company in 1937 when the Snow White was made. Because Walt Disney put so much finance resources in just that movie. So if the movie had failed, Walt Disney may actually not even continue to work his movies and all. I mean, the whole production company could have been complete bankrupt. So if that happened, all the classic movies we have today may not actually have happened. Or if another company bought the rights for Disney, they could have created something else. And as many knows that some of the classic movies like Snow White, uh, Cinderella, uh, some of the movies are based on the Brother Grimm's stories. But the Snow White original from the Brother Grimm, it's way darker. In fact, the evil queen, the stepmother, doesn't even exist in the book. In fact, the one who's so jealous is in fact Snow White's own mother. Here's a plot twist that makes the whole thing dark in that original Snow White story. In fact, that the prince, he punished the queen by asking a blacksmith to make iron shoes, and they put the queen's feet in the shoes while they're still glowing hot. They hadn't even been cooled. They hadn't been put in a water to cool down. So she was literally having basically molten iron on her feet. And that is not good, because if you do have molten iron or molten metal on your feet or hand, yeah, they burn off. She was forced to dance until she was no longer alive. That is the original Snow White story. So you may understand why Disney company decided to change some of the end of that. I think it's pretty much a good idea too on that, since yeah, it's not really accepted much in that sense. But just say from this, Disney has produced so many classical movies over the years. It is unbelievable how many have been produced. I mean, there is even one particular movie that is usually not talked about. And that movie actually has a nickname. The movie Disney tried to bury. And that is The Black Cauldron. The movie was produced in 1985, and the fact is, during one of the earlier premiere of the movie, one of the movie theaters or the cinema, it was yeah, well, they actually had to force a change one scene in that, because what happened in the audience, there were young children, and they all panicked, screamed like bloody murder type of scream. Yeah, so Disney had to change that in the movie. But as the nickname said, the movie that Disney tried to bury. You may think the movie was released on VHS shortly afterwards. Nope, that didn't even happen, because the movie was even though the movie was made in 1985, it wasn't until like sometime in 1990s when the movies actually got its own release on VHS. Yeah, so that is strange. Normally, when a movie is produced, they are just months, perhaps even a year later, when they are now these days are on DVD or something, a Blu-ray. But that movie, it took several years before that movie was even released to the public. I mean, it's kind of a bit odd. And I have seen the movie. It will tell you that this is actually also the only one of the movies of Disney that doesn't even have any musical number in it. If you're thinking Disney movies have some musical events, like say Aladdin, A New World, or Cinderella, when they are making the dress for her, or Snow White, when the when she is dancing with the dwarves in the cottage, or the Jungle Book, you name it. But The Black Cauldron is in fact the only Disney movie that doesn't even have a single musical number in it. That's kind of a strange. Think about it. Considering all the other Disney classic movies, every single one has a musical number, but The Black Cauldron is in fact the only one that doesn't even have a single music number. It's a bit strange, but even though Disney tried to bury the movie, it's well, not technically not even bury, but try to not include it as a movie. The Black Cauldron is actually even based on a book series. There were talks about to remake it as a to base on the whole book series as a live action. But that was only about a few years ago when that was announced. But nope, it hasn't even happened yet though, and I don't think that's gonna happen anytime soon. I mean, that's like more than 10 years ago or something like that. But yeah, one of the Disney movies that's also have recently been talked about. Hmm, let's see. I know it's at least one movie. By next year, there's actually a new Star Wars movie that's being said to be released. But it's just hasn't been given any actual official title to the movie yet. But that next Star Wars movie is that's supposed to be released next year. There's only a short mentioning what's happening in the movie. Not like it. There isn't much. They only been mentioned that this one is said to take place 15 years after Episode 9, and that Ray is now an official Jedi Master trying to rebuild the Jedi. But there are some evil forces that's trying to prevent her from doing it. That's all that's been information there is about it. And you may ask, is the Sith the evil counterpart to the Jedi in return? I mean, you may think that the Sith are now extinct or gone. Well, technically, it necessarily meaning that even though the Darth Sidious or Palpatine is completely gone, it doesn't mean that when he died, it made the end permanent end for the Sith. Not really. Not really. The Sith is actually not even a species. It's like an ancient organization. And during the Galactic Empire, when he was ruling it, he had dozens of dark side users. In expanded universe, he had hundreds, perhaps thousands of dark side Jedi, dark side adepts, dark Jedi, or something like that. So even if Palpatine and Darth Vader had died, any dark side users could take title as Darth and be proclaimed as the Dark Lord of the Sith. So it's possible that could happen in the new one. So you may be thinking, is it possible that in the new Star Wars movie there's gonna be the Sith have returned after 15 years? Maybe, maybe, but we just don't know. And you may, before anyone asks, is this gonna be episode 10? Not really. I mean, I just don't know myself. I mean, this could have been. I mean, the new Star Wars movie next year could be potentially be Star Wars Episode 10, or perhaps even be a start of a new trilogy. There were actually even talks about invite. You may think, you may ask, some people may ask about what about some of the characters in the from episode 7, 8, or 9, like say Finn. the former stormtrooper, if he's gonna be in the new movie. From what I can tell, he actually isn't going to return in the new movie because that is kind of strange because he is a force sensitive stormtrooper, well, a former stormtrooper. So if Jay, sorry, not Jay, but if Ray would have been developing a new start in this new Jedi school, Finn would have been a perfect candidate for the Padawan. But yeah, so I don't even know how many other characters from the original movies or if yeah, and some people may remember in the scene of the episode 9 when you have Lando talking to this Jana about where she is from. Many people wondered, who is this? Is there some like connection between them? And this is actually also Lando had a daughter, but she was kidnapped by the First Order along many other children from former rebel leaders. And he searched for years to find her, but was unable to do so. And here's the thing, according to Wikipedia, Lando's daughter was born in 12 APY, 12 years after the Battle of Yavin, and Jana was born between 12 and 15 APY. So people may wait, Jana is his daughter? I mean, after all, they are both African American characters, black hair. Actually, that was a very common that was actually common theory that Jana was actually his daughter. I mean, it kind of make that it kind of added up at the time because since Jana was born between 12 and 15 APY and Lando's daughter was born in 12 APY and his daughter was kidnapped when she was just only 2 years old by the First Order. And Jana, she was taken away from her family when she was a young child. And even when Lando asked her in the end of the movie where she was from, she doesn't even remember. And it kind of end up in that because people don't remember much when you're 2 to 3 years old. The earliest memory can start from 4 to maybe 5 age. So if Jana was supposed to be born between 12 and 15 APY, and that Lando's daughter was born 12 APY, and that both characters was taken away at a very young age, it makes no sense in that. Don't you think so? But it's even though that Linus' daughter was kidnapped when she was only 2, and even though Jana said that she was taken away from her family at a young age, but she didn't give a specific age, but only as a very young age. So that indicating that could have been around the same age as Lando's daughter. So you've been thinking, hey, all the matched up. They were born around the time, and they were taken away from the families for a young age. Does it even match? Does it even make sense that Jana could actually be Lando's daughter? I had to burst the bubble, but it has later been confirmed they aren't even related at all. I mean, it was a very common theory that Jana was actually Lando's daughter. Many people assumed that. But since Lando's daughter was never mentioned in the movie at all, that was actually in a deleted scene that she was kidnapped by the First Order. So people may ask, what happened? What happened to Lando's daughter? Since she was kidnapped by the First Order when she was only 2 years old. And like even as for Finn, he was taken by the First Order from his own family at a young age. So many of the stormtroopers within the First Order was kidnapped from their own families at a young age. Perhaps at such young age that they don't even remember much of their own family or which planet they were even from. It kind of added in that. So people like, wait, so if Finn is African American character, wouldn't he also be like Lando's son? Yeah, well, technically that's some people also probably would assume, but it is not even that. It only mentioned that he has a daughter, not a son. But in his expanded universe, he actually has a son, not a daughter. And yeah, it's kind of a strange though. Even though that this character of Lando's daughter she were mentioned in the series, in a deleted scene, but people can't take the deleted scenes as canon at all. I mean, when I first read about that Lando had a daughter and that she was kidnapped by the First Order when she was only 2 years old, I was in shock. But I also learned that other children of the First Order or the rebel leaders was kidnapped by the First Order. I was merely in shock at that. So the big question is, what happened to them? Did they all become stormtroopers? Or did they somehow, could some of them actually end up being served as the high ranking officers in the First Order? Well, I mean, we know for a fact at least two former stormtroopers, Jana and Finn, were kidnapped from their own families by the First Order at a young age. And even Lando, he had his own daughter kidnapped by the First Order. There are even other rebel leaders who had also their children kidnapped by the First Order. And what happened to them? Did they all turn into stormtroopers? Well, I don't think so. I mean, it depends. I mean, here's another thing. During the stormtrooper training for like Finn, anything that's supposed to be fun were strictly forbidden. But it turned out at least that he had a friend, an actual friend in the stormtrooper corps, and that friend smuggled comic books to their own place. But the thing is, if they had been caught reading comic books, they would have eventually been sent off to be re-educated or perhaps reprogrammed. I don't even know how that's even possible, but I don't even want to know. But seriously, whew, that's rough. But people been asking, now that the fact going to be a new movie by next year, and that there is some evil forces that is threatening Rey's new Jedi school. Could that be First Order survivors? Doubt it. Could it have been the Sith? Or at least someone claimed to be the new Sith? It's potential. But there is another question that may be asked themselves among the fans of the Star Wars community. Is the new movie going to be Star Wars Episode 10? Or perhaps even start off a new trilogy? I don't know. I just don't have the answer on that one. I mean, it's kind of a strange if you ask me. Because before Disney bought the Star Wars rights, that the whole Star Wars timeline was altered. It was hugely altered. But there is actually even another movie that I'm really looking forward. Mandalorian and Grogu movie that's set to be released the next year. And even though they only had released one or two trailers on it so far, they actually revealed some details on some upcoming characters in that movie. Like, but there's actually one scene, the Racing Crest, Mando's own starship that he flew from the season 1 and 2. Actually, it happened in the second movie in this movie. So, question here is the Mandalorian Grogu movie set to take place after season 2, or perhaps around the time of season 3 finale, or perhaps even season 1? Because Racing Crest was destroyed and the finale of season 2 finale. But the ship is back in the movie. So the main question is the movie set to take place long before season 2 finale, or is that he managed to get a hands on a new Racing Crest? I don't know. It's not really much revealed on that. But there is actually at least one character that I am really happy they included this one, and that is Gesserlip Seb Aurelius from Star Wars Rebels, the Lasat. He was a rebel and later joined in the Republic Defense Force. That purple guy, Seb, he is awesome, and he is pretty much awesome. And I think I actually include him in the movie makes the things whole lot more better than is expected. But there is actually, if you think about it, if you've seen a trailer and you've seen when Mando and Grogu is talking to a woman, that woman actually is from a previous sci-fi movie franchise, and her character in that franchise was Ripley. She is the one from the first movie. Yeah, the one who played Ripley in the Alien movies is gonna play a role in the Mandalorian Grogu movie. I was like, whoa, that is epic. But you may also see there is this kind of ripped hut in this look to be in this arena. You may ask, who is that? Well, we have that confirmed to be Rota the Hut. You may not remember, but he is actually made an appearance in the Clone Wars, but in only one episode. In fact, Rota is the son of the late Jabba the Hutt. But since he was in the Clone Wars, he was just only like 4 to 5 years old. Or at least he was like a baby in that movie, in that series. But he appeared to be a uh, very young age. Also, like I think maybe perhaps in his 20s, something. But that doesn't even make sense. So you may think, why haven't we seen Rota ever since any other mention of him? What happened to him? Because he only meant happened in just one episode of Clone Wars, but that's it. We don't even had we don't even heard of him because in the Star Wars Mandalorian or even in the Book of Boba Fett, when the twins, Jabba's cousins, showed up to put a claim on his territory. But that is the thing. If this is true, if the movie of the Mandalorian Grogu is set to take place in 9 APY, as much as the season 1 and 2 and 3 of Mandalorian, that would make sense. Because if Rota isn't he's like in his early 20s or something in that particular season or in that year, Normally, normally when someone's parent being passed away or killed, or in this case, by Jabba, the child or the next kin would be inherit any wealth, money, property. So technically, the twins shouldn't even have any first claim. Rota, Jabba's own son, would have been the one first to put the claim on the on his father's power, his criminal empire. But that even happened. So who knows? So the question is, does it mean that Rhoda doesn't even want to be a crime boss like his late father Jabba were? Because based on the fact that he happened to appear in the movie as a ripped, so perhaps he preferred not to even want to be a crime boss, perhaps be more maybe a glad a fighter in order to earn a certain an honest living. Perhaps he just want to don't want to do anything about his father's criminal empire. Since many Hutts do fact do crimes with the spices, slave trades, and all such, but there isn't always that. Including like in Star Wars expanded universe, there is actually even one single Hutt that is a Jedi. Well, unfortunately, he is also for the dark side and became the Pine ruler, and yeah, so that's a problem. Should I request Starlight, Cadence, True Love, all the stories Colors, or the Valentine's Day? And his story Shining Armor passed away 4 years ago. Flurry is 3 years old. Starlight Cadence story, it has been only 2 years since Starlight Glimmer Cadence started dating, and that even told Twilight. Huh? Robert, that is actually I think that is probably a best idea since that seems more. Excuse me. I think that is actually more reasonable uh, as a more as a Valentine story. Definite. Since um, but the one for the Cozy Heart Night story, um, yeah, I may have to ask my girlfriend for that, a little bit help for that, since she usually helps me a lot with to find good pictures, his own stories, and even shipping. So yeah, so I will ask her if she could find potential good one for that one. So, and since Halloween is exactly a month away, so I have that about 4 weeks on me to come up with a good story. But eh, for that story itself, I don't even want expecting the story to be super long. I expect maybe the story might be just be okay. I guess maybe between 10, 15 minutes, something like that. It depends on mostly it depends on the storyline. If I can come up with sometimes the idea just flows on. It just comes to me when I start the story, So I just at the moment I don't know um, since I hadn't been focused much on the story and so but I mean it's not like impossible and it's just I will try to come up with some good things. I mean I have 4 weeks on me and usually I put something like this very to the very end and that is stressful for me, trust me. I've done that so many times before and I always stress near the end. Ugh, that is one of the worst feelings. So making Starlight and Cadence as a love story, uh, as of Valentine's next year, Valentine's Day, Valentine's Day next year is um. I mean, it's. I mean, yeah, I can definitely do that, but it's. You ask for this in audio. Hmm. I mean, it's possible that might actually not even be as audio. It might actually be multiple pictures with text and music. So, I mean, I'm just saying, it's you should be at least being prepared for that, for this story. David Redraw. Hello. Yeah, just talking about random stuff. Talked about this Zootopia movie too, about Star Wars and like the new upcoming Mandalorian Grogu movie next year. That is not the only Star Wars movies to be released next year. It's going to be one of the uh, Rey Skywalker rebuilding the new Jedi when some evil forces trying to stop her. Said to take happen 15 years after Episode 9, and I don't know if this is going to be Episode 10 or a whole new start of a new trilogy or something. I don't know. In fact, this is not the only two movies that set up being happen. Um, from what I understand, there is, I think, between 8 to 10 new other Star Wars movies that is set to happen within the next several years from now. So, yeah, I don't know. So, yeah, it has been a long day and a lot of things happen. Yeah, Zootopia 2 is pretty fun movie. It is. But like I said earlier in the stream, it's kind of a bit strange of some of the details in that one. Have you heard of Rainbow Factory? Wait, Rainbow Factory, is that the like the creepy pasta version of the MLP? If there is about that, then yes, I have heard about it, but never saw it. And if I did, yeah, it wouldn't even scare me at all. It just. I've seen Cupcake as a version of MLP. Seen it. Not scared at all. You're writing a fan fiction about the Rainbow Factory? Well, that's cool. That's pretty cool. Yeah, people can write their own stories of version of something that happened. Even though there is already one version of the Rainbow Factory, you can always make your own version. There is no right or wrong in that. There isn't. Like like the Cupcake story. It's just how Rainbow, like Pinky, basically had taken all her friends' cutie marks to make a coat, or at least a cloak of it, or almost like a cape. That's that's freaky. The name of the fan fiction is called Rainbow's Recovery. Hmm. There is actually even one. Uh, there is actually one uh, fan fiction of the MLP, which is also scary, and that one is called The Element of Insanity. Since yeah, that is that's kind of a bit weird. I mean, having the Team Fortress or Team Fortress 2 characters, their souls, their spirits taking over the main six, and Twilight has two spirits in her to make her more insane. And yeah, that was. I seen it, and frankly speaking, it didn't even scare me at all. In that Star Wars movie with Rey and the evil force that's going to be an ancient enemy of the Jedi, more ancient than the Sith, Yuzong Vong. Yuz. Oh wait, I know exactly what species you're talking about, Robert. Yuzong Vong. Yeah, they unfortunately is they aren't even part of the new canon anymore. At least as far as I can tell, they aren't. They are part of the expanded universe, or AKA Star Wars Legends. But they aren't actually not even. Well, technically they are. Okay, based on the fact that they are in the old Star Wars timeline, they actually are, well, as a organized species, they're actually younger than the Jedi Order. In Star Wars Legends, the Jedi Order was established around 25,000 BBY, while the Yuzong Vong, who left their own galaxy to find a new home to conquer, was around 15,000 BBY. So that's 10,000 years younger than Jedi Order. And they weren't even aware of the Jedi or even the Force at all as a concept until they arrived in the galaxy in the first place. And but that would have been a very epic if they actually brought the Yuzong Vong in the current Star Wars. Even though I don't see this new Star Wars movie as canon. I mean, think about it. Starkiller Base is a basic ripoff of Death Star, just much bigger, and rather from being a battle station, it was actually just a planet. And that planet used to be a Jedi sacred planet, Ilum, where they found the crystals. What about Rocket to Insanity? Hmm, that's a good question. I don't know. I haven't actually played Team Fortress 2 games at all. I seen people make art of those. So yeah, but using the use of Vong in the Star Wars as a character in the new movie franchise, well, that would have been epic. That's for certain of that. Since the use of Vong, they don't even care if they were hurt by any new means. In fact, they welcomed, they embraced the pain. That was crazy. In fact, in Star Wars Legends, the Yuzong Vong actually could once use the Force. But after they lost their own home planet, Yuzantar, they somehow, the Force was stripped away from them. They lost the connection to the Force. Like the Rakata in Star Wars Legends also were somehow suffered from a plague and they lost their connection to Force. But you want to know something about the Yuzong Vong? That the planet they lived on in their own home galaxy, Yuzantar, was pretty unique. Because that wasn't only a planet, but the planet had a sentient consciousness. It basically could think and communicate with the Yuzong Vong intelligently. So basically the planet was a living being, a living creature. Don't ask me how the concept of a planet that had achieved ascension. Basically, it was a planet that was a living creature capable of intelligent communication. But since the planet was destroyed, in an ancient war. So, but the planet before the planet was destroyed, a seed from Yuuzhan'tar traveled all the way to the Star Wars galaxy and reformed a new planet called Sonoma Sekot. But you want to know something about this? That planet Sonoma Sekot in the Star Wars Legends, even though the planet was sentient, basically an intelligent, living planet, and the planet could travel from one star system to another. I mean, the first was happened to appear in the unknown regions, and at one point it even orbited the star in the Coruscant star system for a brief time, and it could travel between one star system to another. And here's the thing: if Earth was somehow would leave our solar system, travel through space, everything on the planet will freeze. Everything will die. The ocean will complete solid ice. Trees would eventually die. Anything on the planet would die. But Sonoma Sekot, who can travel through the galaxy, is still livable. Even though this is only fictional, but still, the concept of a planet that's living, intelligent, is capable of communicate telepathically with its inhabitants. That's impressive. In Star Wars in Legends, there are only two known: Yuuzhan'tar, the original homeworld of Yuuzhan Vong, and Sonoma Sekot. It's yeah, that's impressive how to see a planet that's able to communicate like that. So, but in realistically, is that possible in real life? I don't think so. But there is actually a recent event that happened. Um, NASA actually announced they possibly could have found a potential fossilized life outside Earth. They think it's possible they could have found ancient remains of life, microscopic life on Mars. Their current rover had drilled in a rock and found something that couldn't even be explained at the time. After analyzing pictures, the only explanation that this can only be produced by an organic chemical reaction. The problem is we can't confirm that. Things is the rover still has those samples, but the rover don't have the ability to launch that back in the atmosphere up from in orbit. But even if that is possible, it was still being in orbit. So until we can send something to retrieve that sample, we don't know. But months ago, there was another potential of a possible uh, sign of life outside our solar system on a different planet called K2-18b, an exoplanet located more than 100 light years away from us. Because even though that the star, even those planets are, even the planet within 4 to 10 light years away from us, we can still don't detect any what exactly contain the atmosphere. We can't even take an actual picture on the surface of the planet. Even the most advanced space telescopes like James Webb Telescope. But this planet, K2-18b, was only months ago when there was possible potential sign of life. They believed to be an organic compound that can only be produced by oceanic or aquatic life or marine life forms. But many scientists were skeptical about it. They weren't even like, hallelujah, first sign of alien life outside universe in our universe. But they weren't. Many were optimistic this was the first confirmed sign of life outside our system. But it was later determined it wasn't even life at all. Even long before then, even in our system, there were these organic compounds. There were somehow organic compounds in Venus atmosphere they found. Like, first of all, how does even organic compounds found in Venus atmosphere? It's not possible. Any biological organism that lives on Venus on the surface, yeah, it's not possible because the surface of Venus is, well, the closest thing as basically as hell. They're so hot, like it's so hot it can melt lead. The surface temperature is 92 times more than there is on Earth. And many scientists didn't even think this was organic life forms or compounds. Many think it could have been a geological process, which is true. But even if there were life, possible life on Venus, how about even if there were life there, we couldn't study it. We can't study it. I mean, human itself can't go there. Even if we did have spaceships that could take us to Venus. But the problem of the two things, the temperature and the pressure. Even if we managed to design a capsule, and even if that can withstand the pressure, but as soon as you step outside, you'll be smashed like a pancake. Your eyes like pop out your skull and you burn to death. So that 10, you die in basically in a second you step outside the capsule. That is what I basically say that Venus is the living proof of hellish environment. But then what does an unmanned probes spacecraft to surface? Well, I mean, we have launched several spacecraft to Venus for decades. In the 60s, both Soviet and NASA did send some probes to the surface. But those probes don't even last long. Even Venera 13, one of Soviet Union's last probes that sent to the surface, lasted just for more than 2 hours. Even though they encased the interior is such thick metal to withstand the thermal energy, the heat on Venus. But despite the effort, that Soviet Union probe lasted just more than 2 hours on the surface. So just don't bother to think, send a probe to the planet now when we had wait, that was in the 60s. The technology wasn't even that advanced. We have more advanced technology now. We have developed newer better protection. Maybe. But the still is that even some metals could be resist the heat. We may be able to send a probe there, but this is not a guarantee that's going to last for more than 2 hours, perhaps even 4 hours before being completely useless. Sending a rover to Venus, that would have been denied immediately, practically useless. But the only thing that we could send to Venus is a small, like a balloon. in the upper atmosphere because the temperature that's so heat, so hot that can melt lead is on the surface. The temperature may not even be as much the same on the upper atmosphere. But there are no plans of sending anything to Venus for that, so. But they're not the shocking discovery many years ago that we found there is ice on Mercury, on the south and the north pole of that planet. You may think, whoa, wait, how did it be possible, considering that Mercury is the closest planet to our sun? And it's like so hot, but surprising there is. So yeah, there's a lot of mysteries, that many surprises that we didn't expect it. In the fanfic I'm working on is about the effects a cupcake has on the events of the show. The title of the fanfic is called Cupcake Paradox. Oh, that is interesting. Like what? Like say, what if they actually one cupcake could turn the pony invisible for a brief time, or give them say like the poison joke effect. Say like when Fluttershy, when she injects or step on a poison joke, she gets a deep male voice, and her name is Flutter Guy. So yeah, but imagine that, and it had that in a cupcake. What if they would only give them, turn them into, say, from a pony to maybe a dog, dragon, zebra, but not an alicorn, but different, or I don't even know. But it's a interesting concept. I haven't actually. I have wrote my own several fanfic stories and posted them online, but I haven't even done that in, and I even don't know exactly how many years, but I haven't uh, posted any fan fiction stories on my online for years. But that doesn't include my love stories. That's a whole different thing. I mean, like the effects that the cupcakes has in the creepy pasta. That is the thing. I don't know much about the creepy pasta. I know some characters like Slenderman, Killer Jane, Smile Dog, Eyeless Jack, and some others. But I haven't read much about those. And honestly, creepypasta is not for me. It just, not that it doesn't even scare me. It just, no. I actually was asked at one point, one of my viewers, if I would consider to do love stories based on the main six with some of the iconic killers, like Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger, and all. I'd be like, nope, that's not happening. Nope, that's not happening at all. Since one, I had never even seen any of the Friday 13 movies except for Jason X, one of the last one they made. Which one? I hadn't even seen any other Freddy Krueger movies at all, and not even going to. It's just not my type of horror. So honestly, Halloween with Michael Myers. That depends on which one, since they rebooted the whole franchise. Seeing I haven't seen the reboot or the original, so that's not happening. What else? Texas Chainsaw Massacre with Leatherface. Seen one movie and was I was like, this supposed to be a horror movie? That's even better. I mean, I fast forward the whole movie and it didn't even freak me out at all. It was supposed to be an iconic cult horror movie. But even though this was made in 2003 version of that, it was so bad. I mean, it didn't even scare me at all. But there is one movie, Silent Hill. I've seen clips from the movie, at least one of them, and trust me, I do not want to be able to detail. It's it's pretty gore graphic. It's so freaky. And there is another franchise I hadn't even seen, which is the Saw movies, with this torture horror movies. Not seen any of those, and not even planning to, since, ugh, man, that's freaky and just horrible. Horrible as bad and as not worth my time, honestly. And there is even another franchise, well, I wouldn't say franchise, but several movies, Human Centipede. Trust me, it is absolutely not worth your time. It is absolutely not worth it, in my opinion. Ugh, no, thank you. But there are some horror movies that I have seen over years that I actually, you know, the one of the first time I saw the Poltergeist, I could have been like, not even, I wasn't even a teenager when I saw that. I was probably like, I was probably like in the elementary when I first saw the Poltergeist. And you want to know something? It didn't even freak me out at all. It just, it didn't freak me out much at all. In fact, I enjoyed the movie. It was pretty good. I didn't see the reboot version of that one or the two sequels, only the first one. But there was one detail about the movie I learned years later that was shocking. If you have seen the original, the first Poltergeist, when the unfinished swimming pool in the backyard, when those skeletons showed up, I was like, whoa, that is ooh, good looking skeletons, like so realistic. But that is was the shocking part. They weren't fake props. They weren't even plastic skeletons. They were actual human skeletons. Yeah, they used actual human skeletons in Poltergeist. That was news to me. But there was actually even two movies that I did very much enjoy. They are both from the actually three movies from the 80s. One, the iconic E.T. Phone Home movie. That is the epic one. It's one of the best they ever made from the 80s. You cannot deny that. And the second one, my not whoosh, but which is my absolute favorite movie of all time. I've seen so many times I lost count. The Goonies. The Goonies is one of my best movies ever. I mean, it's so good. And the third, let's see what the third movie was. Right, the close encounter of the third kind, about aliens returning to Earth. That was pretty. It's not a horror. It's a science fiction movie. It's actually very good. Oh, there is actually one movie also from the 80s called Explorers. It's a science fiction child movie, and trust me, it's pretty good. Three boys that actually develop their own spaceship from an old uh, carnival ride, and they were actually able to reach out to some aliens. They build a spacecraft, not like in any of those. You may thinking a spacecraft like, say, almost like a UFO, but no. This particular spacecraft they used was an old uh, carnival. It kind of looks like almost like a roller coaster ride. They turned into a spacecraft, and somehow it worked. It was blasted off into space. I mean, that was epic. That's yeah. But some of the other iconic horror movies over the years, I've seen a few actually, several, but there are some that never even got me scared as much as not even the 10 scale. Though there are some that was questionable. Um, there is actually one franchise. I only seen one of the only first movie. That is what's it called? Paranormal Activity. Supposed to be a haunted movie about a family. I saw the first movie, and throughout the entire movie, I was like, this is supposed to be scary. But it wasn't until the end when I saw the teenage daughter, was somehow possessed. She was standing behind her dad, who was sitting on the couch. She grabbed his head and snapped it in one twist. That freaked me out. But there, of course, the Final Destination. Those movies, they have been made so far 7 movies, and I've seen 2 of those, and not planning to see the rest of the movies. And honestly, it's not the game, not the good. As many probably knows that sequels to several discernible movies usually turn worst for turn way worse from the original. But I'm not saying every sequel to a franchise to a movie turned bad. It depends, of course, for what the from movie, for genre, and yeah. So like the Mask, the one with Jim Carrey playing as the Mask. That movie, epic. The sequel, never saw it, but based on what I heard, it was one of the worst sequels in a decade. If you want to know something about the first one, that yellow suit that he had in the movie was actually not even part of the movie. It was actually a gift from his mother. And they were actually had this big budget for animation, but they didn't even have to use that much of the money for that because Jim Carrey was able enough to move his body almost like in an animation, or as the staff was actually epic. Uh, and in one scene when he has had those bikers in the alley, when he brought up this condom in his pocket, you want to know something? That was not even in the script at all. He actually forgot that he had that in a pocket, and the director and the staff, when they recorded that scene in a movie, they thought it was so funny, so they decided to keep it in a movie. Oh man, that was fun. And one of the funny scenes in the movie of The Mask, when Jim Carrey falls down on the and hit the ground, like, "Look, mom, I'm a roadkill." Oh man, that was funny. And in one of the other movies, also I actually enjoyed, The Lord of the Rings. In that movie, when Aragorn kicks the head of an orc and screams, actually, this might be surprising, but the actor broke his toe while doing that. And the staff decided to keep it. So yeah. The other fanfic I'm working on is MNOP version of the SpongeBob episode Squirrel Jokes. The fanfic is called Apple Jokes. Dimetro is telling jokes about Apple Bloom. I hope at least those jokes aren't, you know, offensive, considering that now they're friends in the series and all. Um, you know, how about they have it as some sort of some sort of uh, what if it's like it could have been like a roast show that they are not also telling jokes but also roasting Apple Bloom in some sort of performance in among their friends, and that actually sounds more funny though. But yeah, I mean, but as the cupcakes and the cupcakes paradox when it affects on one of the as the as an creepy pasta, I have to say it's a interesting concept. I haven't read much about the creepypasta much, except there's only one case of the Slender Man. They actually made him as a movie, and I did look him up as if the Slender Man is public domain or if anyone owns the right of the character, just in case if someone would like to make it their own version of the movie. And but I'm not sure if he actually is copyrighted or public domain. It depends. Uh, yeah. So, but yeah, I since I did read, I have mentioned this sometime before that there's a British movie production company who has so far made two slasher version of Winnie the Pooh with Blood and Honey, and even Peter Pan. Also now there's been on the development for the sequel to Peter Pan movie, and which is also has Pinocchio as a slasher, which is currently in development. And that's here's the thing: the Pinocchio slasher movie. They have actually. This is actually on Wikipedia, so this is actually confirmed what's going to happen. At least part of the summary of this part of the story is that the grandson of Geppetto gives him the doll or the puppet, and the puppet Pinocchio go on a crusade to eradicate the evilness in the world. So I don't even know how that's even exactly what he was planning or what he deemed as evil. And there's even other version, say Bambi, who has been exposed to some, I think it's toxic waste to make him a complete murder maniac and that start killing hunters and other people. Yeah, that's just also. And that a Canadian movie production made a Mickey Mouse as a horror slasher. While technically it isn't even Mickey Mouse itself, but there's a guy who wears an old mask of Mickey Mouse. So yeah, but I did mention this before that some if you wanted to do a horror movie or something, a horror story based on some characters like Disney or something, okay, or at least when you want to make your own movie on based on Disney characters, that is not acceptable since Disney owns the character rights or the copyright for the characters. But if you wanted to do, say, I don't know, a horror movie based on, say, okay, not a horror, but it feels like it's sort of like came up with the idea to making, say, I don't know, turning King Arthur into a zombie infested world, or to make, I mean, what if someone like say, can I turn King Arthur, Robin Hood as killers or something? Oh, in a slasher version. Um, if people like, no, dude, you can't do that. But here's the thing: if anyone wanted to make a slasher movie based on King Arthur or Robin Hood, except you don't, if you don't do it from Disney's Robin Hood with the Fox character, but if you're doing as the Robin Hood as a human, and for same thing with King Arthur, it's actually perfectly legal. No one owns the right to King Arthur character or the Robin Hood, since both Robin Hood and King Arthur had been a public domain for centuries. They actually have been told, those the stories about King Arthur and Robin Hood have been told for hundreds of years. So no one doesn't even own the rights to those characters. Robin Hood has been around at least the 1200s in England. King Arthur had been around for much longer than that. So if anyone want to turn King Arthur, Robin Hood to a slasher or even as a killers, that is actually perfectly safe. You can do that because no one owns the characters at all. So if anyone want to do that as a character, or say, or if they decide to make, say, turn making a more, say, modern or futuristic version of Robin Hood in a futuristic England where the the monarch or perhaps has been the wealthy is turning that the wealthy doing anything to be more rich, corrupt, and that one young man named Robin decides to take his own hands on helping the poor by stealing from the rich and get back to the people. And or let's say for King Arthur, that he is either reawakened in the modern world and that he decides not want to be a king, but he decides to, I don't know, perhaps be, or what if they somehow it's someone making King Arthur not king, but decides to make him, say, I don't know, a police detective, and that his name is Arthur King or Arthur Pendragon, or just name Arthur King, but he is not no longer a king, but more a police detective that solves murders and such. I mean, it's a concept itself. So if anyone want to do anything about, say, a horror movie slasher with the King Arthur, Robin Hood as a character, as them as a killer, they can do that because they are both public domain. Means which means they aren't owned by anyone, since both characters have been around for hundreds of years. As long as you don't do, say, a new version of the with based on Disney's cartoon movie of Robin Hood. As long as you don't use any of those characters in a movie, you're you're perfectly safe. But remember, if you wanted to do a horror movie based on something, or maybe say King Arthur in a futuristic world where there's zombie invasion or something, or perhaps there's an alien invasion, and that the only one who can save England from that invasion is King Arthur. I mean, there's like no better than saying this, but there are many versions that many people can use for any characters. There is actually even one other, actually one character similar to both King Arthur and Robin Hood, but He is not a king, he is not noble, but he's a local hero. And he's also, like Robin Hood and King Arthur, fictional character. It has been confirmed that he is not even a historical real person. And this individual is named Wilhelm Tell from Switzerland. I don't know how many people knows about him, but there is at least one story of Wilhelm Tell that Switzerland at the time was under the rule of Austria, and that this, I think, a duke, he literally wants the people in that town in Switzerland to obey him, but that they had to bow to him every time they see him. But since he can be present in there's this small town daily basis, so he came up with this plan that he put a pole in the center of the town and put his hat on it. And he told some guards or soldiers to keep a lookout to make sure that everyone is bowing to his hat. If no one doesn't bow to the hat, they will be arrested. But Wilhelm's son, in the some different version of the story, that he throws something on the hat and is immediately arrested. And the news spread to his father, Wilhelm, and he was taken to where his son is held. He said that his son is pretty much allowed to go, except if he can do something to prove. Since in the folklore of that Wilhelm is actually a very skilled marksmanship in a crossbow. So in a story, he is told to be using a crossbow and they put an apple on his son's head. But you may be thinking that he had to stand, like, say, only 10 feet away. No. He was told that since he's supposed to be so skilled by using a crossbow, he had to stand, if I remember right, that he had to stand, I think, okay, this is depending on the version of the sources. It's like sometimes not even 10 feet. Sometimes he had to stand the double or the triple the distance in from that and fire an arrow from his crossbow to hit the apple on his son's head. He knows one simple mistake, rather from hit the apple, the arrow can hit his son's head and kill him. But he has no other obligation. He has no other options to do that. So he fires at the apple and hits the apple. The arrow penetrates the apple and is stuck inside the tree, and his son is safe. That is one of the story about how Wilhelm Tell is a folklore hero in Switzerland. Even though he is not a historical, actual, verified person, like, say, Robin Hood was never actually verified. But there is people that believes that Robin Hood actually is a real person. There is some people in England that believes that they may actually know where he's buried, but he's far from different from the story that he is actually not even what they in the stories been telling. This group of people believe they have actually found where he's buried, and that this Robin Hood is actually a thief. That he didn't give the money to the rich, but he kept it himself. But it's not the very time like, okay, first, even if this is would be in case that this supposed person may believe is the Robin Hood, but how can they prove it? Because in the story, like the Disney's version, he ended up marrying Lady Marian, and that the fact that she is also Lady Marian is related to King Richard. So How would we know? So even if that is, and if this man is supposed to be the real Robin Hood, but he is a thief, not a hero, and since there's no other, if there aren't any, let's say, if there aren't any living descendants of this particular man alive today, we wouldn't be able to verify if they, if this is the real Robin Hood. So even let's say King Arthur, he is also just a historical figure, not verified as a real person. Because this is the thing about King Arthur. There are so many different versions of who he actually is. Some think that he's a Saxon, or some believe that he is a British individual, or some believe that he is a Roman general that defected from the Roman Empire to fight for the local people against the empire. But it's just on that. And also, there are so many different versions of when he's supposed to be lived. If it is supposed to be in the 380, 480, 580, or even later. It's a depend on that. So who is, if King Arthur was real, who was he? When did he supposed to be lived? That is the thing. We don't even know. And since he was supposed to be alleged to be buried in Glastonbury in England, and at the late 1100s, around 1198, a group of monks from a nearby monastery believe they actually found his burial. They dug down in the ground, and according to the story, they found this wood coffin, like nothing like a wood coffin that you may think that's modern one today, but a dug out, uh, more like a, it's someone had used a tree and just carved out a tree trunk and made it as a coffin. And inside the coffin was a man and another smaller individual with smaller, supposed to be remains of blonde hair. And that what they believe was the Queen Guinevere, his beloved queen. And that they followed, there was even a cross. But since the cross is long gone by now, and they refilled the hole where they suppose burial was found. But many things, if this is supposed to be King Arthur's burial, eventually, even if that were being re-digged there, well, we won't even be sure if that's actually where he's buried. But later in the 20th century, there were some um, scientists did use a ground penetrating radar to say searched the ground where this alleged where King Arthur's burial was found by the monks, and they could confirm that there were someone had been digging on the spot. So, but they couldn't confirm if someone had actually been buried there. But the size of what they've been digging was this about the size. Well, it's about almost the size of where a normal coffin would be buried. But they didn't even dug there at all. And even though King Arthur is supposed to be buried in Avalon, a mythical island that's can only be reached by a magical boat or some kind. That's the thing. Who knows if that place is actually real? Some believe the Glastonbury temple, or not say temple, but uh, the hill where in the Glastonbury is supposed to be in the actual Avalon. Because if the area was being flooded, that would have been that small hill would have been turned to a small island for that in description. But King Arthur itself, I don't think he was any actual person, since there are different versions of how he could have been. He could have been a Saxon. He could have been a Roman Empire, a Roman general, or he could have been a British person. But that's also when he's supposed to be lived. Was it in a 300 AD, 400 AD, or 500 AD? That's just a thing. We don't even know. There are so many different versions of who he actually is and when he's supposed to be lived. So it's not what we can verify by historical if he's actually a real person. So you're saying. Same thing as Robin Hood. If Starlight and Kanan start dating, how a 5-year-old very hard to react. Um, as a 5-year-old, well, considering that would have been happy, she would be surprised if they have been also kept as a secret from Flurry Heart. But as a Flurry Heart, if she was 3 years old, she wouldn't even understand the list what dating or a couple as a concept is. She would only been saying that her mother is having someone special around. But she wouldn't even, since a 3-year-old wouldn't even get to understand the concept of girlfriends, dating, romance at all. And even if Flurry Heart was 5-year-old, she's still a bit too young to even to get the grasp on the concept of dating, relationships. But she may get the hint of that the Starlight is someone special to her mother. But if Flurry would say if she was about say 10, if she was between 10 years old or something, then she may have to get the at least get some of the concept what dating relationships is. And if she was okay, if Flurry was hard to say if she was 13 and or 15 years old, yeah, then she would definitely know exactly what the Starlight and Cadence were together. She would then get the idea was dating romantic relationship is. In fact, I the first time I had a girlfriend in my life, I was about 7, even though I have no idea what that even were. I had no basic concept at all. But I did learn about years later on was like a teenager. So yeah, just a bit reference. So but for a 3-year old as a Flurry, how she would react? Well, she would just be happy to see her mother happy, I guess, but that's much of that she could even grasp or her mind can handle. But a 5-year old, well, that's about the same. At least that she is a bit older, but still too young to even understand exactly what romance is. But she probably gets just to see happy to see her mother smiling and happy to see Starlight is around someone that she knows and also liked as being around. But yeah, I think that's I think this is enough time for me to do the stream since I think it's time for me to end the stream here since past 2 hour mark and yeah, so I don't want to be staying stream on my too much. And since I have some plans to do tomorrow, so I don't want to be streaming too much longer in this. So yeah. So until next time, people, what which I hope to be on Friday, hopefully, and Saturday. So until then, I hope everyone have a good early week and hopefully a good night's sleep for everyone around the world. So as always, this is Sushabu signing off. Bye.